Hey, good afternoon. We're live with Karen Margulis.
Hey, welcome back. Hey, I want to just first of all start off by um, thanking you all for watching last week. It was kind of an experiment, and it was fun to realize that some of you were actually watching, and it was fun to do. So I'm going to try another one for this Sunday, and I'll try to do them as long as I'm home. I'm home for another month, and then I start another crazy travel schedule. So for today, what I thought I would do is just kind of take you behind the scenes of the studio and on a typical Sunday afternoon. Done my errands for the day. Dinner's gonna be is planned. I have a few hours that I have to myself, and so I've come down to my studio to paint. I've got Jenny, I've got Heidi, and normally I would put on some music and paint. The thing of it is what do you paint? Because like it's one thing you get time to paint, but then sometimes we spend so much time figuring out what to paint, then we have used up all of our precious time. So what I do sometimes is, so that I have always a subject in mind to paint, is last week I showed you my inspiration jar. Now I've got an inspiration basket, because I've got so many photos and things that inspire me from my trips that I've taken this summer. And so I've got this to choose from. But sometimes I'm not going to pick from that this week. Sometimes I just go back to old favorites, and I decide that I want to make a series, and that's what I'm going to do for today. So I came across this photo. This is from Pawleys Island, South Carolina, and I went with friends a couple years ago, and it's an endless source of inspiration for me. I'm always drawn to the marshes of this area, coast of South Carolina. And what I want to do is take this very simple scene and see if I can do some variations on it, if I can come up with several painting ideas. That way I'm never without an idea. So I can take this scene and see how many times I can do it in different ways. So maybe a different format, maybe different color choices, different underpainting, different papers. So today I thought, well, I'm going to do an 8x10, and I want to kind of stay a little bit true to the reference photo, because I do like that the excitement between the interesting dark shape and the sunset, but the sky evidently was not white, so I have to figure out what I'm going to do with the sky. So it's always important that I take time to do a plan, because if I take time to do a plan before I start painting, then it's a lot easier for me to paint and not have to get out of that zone. I think I might have talked about that last week, but it's really important that I start with a plan. So I did a black and white thumbnail, just 2-value thumbnail, just so I can see what I could do with these shapes. Then what I did was I translated onto my paper. Now the paper that I'm using for this painting is white Pastel Premier sanded paper, and I chose white because I love UArt paper, that's my favorite, but I decided I'd use this paper because I really wanted that contrast between the light and the dark, so I thought the white paper would be fun. And I've already done the underpainting, and I want to show you how I did it. I'm using this product, Art Graph Taylor water-soluble pigment. I'll take one out. And I got it at the IAPS convention when I went last summer, and I have really enjoyed using these for underpainting. So they're like these, they're meant to be like the tailor's chalk, and they feel waxy, but they're not really waxy. But what's really fun about them is it takes very, very little pigment. You can see I'm hardly using it. So it's not very dark, right? I didn't really use very much. So it's the fun part is to see when you wet it. So I'm going to use a brush and a little bit of water. And when you wet it, look at how rich it becomes. Now, of course, the harder you press, the darker it would be. But to me, this is, you know, really, really interesting. And it comes in several earth colors, and it really makes for a beautiful, rich underpainting. And I'm just wetting it with water. And I just wanted to show you. This one is already dry. Excuse me. So the next thing that I do, and so this will be my painting number 2. So I've already got a series going. I've got a different format. So I'm going to start with this painting, and this will be something that I could work on later on in the week. Now, I've taken the step and selected my colors in advance. That's another thing that I like to do. So that I'm not overwhelmed by this many pastels, I select out the few that I think I might want to use for the painting. I can always add to it, but when I add, if I were to add a pastel, I would go ahead and put it in this tray so I can keep track of how many I'm using. So I have a variety of pastel brands here, but the majority of them are Terry Ludwig pastels, which are my favorite. But there's a couple of probably some Diane Townsend's in here as well. And I like to use some of those for the sky. So I'm ready to go ahead and paint. This is dry, and I'm going to start by reinforcing the dark. So it's very easy because I've laid out the selection of pastels that I think I could use for the dark. I think I'm going to put on my glasses because I have a lot of detail. I want to suggest detail. I don't like to really put in every leaf on the tree, but I need to be able to see where I'm going to place the sky holes. So I'm going to go ahead and just reinforce the dark areas of this tree shape and down here on the ground. And I'm using a dark, I guess it's a really dark purple.
Denise never thought of using your trays and hooking it under the knobs.
Well, these trays are butcher trays that they're sold for mixing watercolor. I got them in, I think I got them at Blick's. And it just is an accident that they fit under the knobs. It's not meant to do that, but it was one of those happy accidents. So I love this because it just keeps them nice and handy. Let's see, now I'm going to add another layer. What is this one? This is a dark blue. The whole idea when I'm layering these dark values is I'm trying to get a nice interesting blend of darks. Instead of just saying, oh, it's a tree, it's going to be green, I want it to be an interesting mix of color before I go to the green. I'll eventually use green, but I want to add some color first. Let's put a little bit down in the grassy areas as well. And then I think I'm going to use another color. Let's go with a red. And the key for making this work, this idea of layering all these colors together, is that the colors that I'm selecting are all very close in value. So in other words, I'm not jumping in with something very light like this. I'm gradually building up the layers by keeping the values really close together in this beginning stages. So I'm already starting to get a little bit of the glow in the trees by using this dark red. And the goal or the concept I had in mind for this painting is the glow on the trees from the setting sun. That was what drew me to this. Here's another layer. This is a dark brown. Well, I guess I could put some of that red down into the grass. Just a little bit down in there. Go back to this dark brown I had. And then I think I'm going to go with some dark green, finally.
Hi from Portugal, Isabel.
Hi, Isabel. And what I'm starting to do now is try to create some of the feeling of the foliage on the pine trees here and in the grasses. So it's not just trying not to be just color by number, but to actually create a little bit of direction or the type of leaves or foliage of these palm trees. Now I'm adding a little bit of a lighter value green. You can maybe start to see how it's a little bit lighter. on top of this dark. So I'm going to leave these trees alone for now. Basically, I've done all the dark that I want to do. Well, I'm actually going to do one more dark. I'm going to go ahead and put in some of these trunks.
Elle is from Ontario, Canada.
Hi there. And I'm using a dark blue, and I'm putting in where I think I see some of these trunks. And I'm really not, I'm not married to this reference photo. So in other words, if I feel like I need a trunk or a branch somewhere else and it's not in the photo like that, it doesn't matter. It gets to be where I have to make the painting work. And the photo is just kind of giving me suggestions. And I'm going to go ahead. There's one thing that I forgot to take out of this messy pile. I don't know if this is even the right one. These are sorely in need of cleanup. This will be good. This is a darker burgundy, and I'm going to go over the blue trunk marks that I made with some of this. So this will give a little bit more variety to the colors, even in the within the trunks. Okay.
Mary says she enjoys seeing how you build from darks to lights, but add color and visual interest to the shadows.
Thank you. I mean, I could definitely just go right with the green, dark green, but hopefully this will end up being a little bit more interesting. Alright, now once I've got, I think, all the darks in place where I think that they should go, I'm going to go ahead and work on the lights. And the lights are going to be the sky. So, I have a lot of freedom with this bad photograph, because in the bad photograph it's showing the sky as white, and I know it wasn't white, and I'm trying to remember what colors I saw in the sky when I stood there and took the photo, but you could see that the sun was setting and illuminating the leaves, so there had to have been color in the sky. So what I'm going to do is just start with a pale kind of grayed down blue, because it wouldn't be a bright, vibrant blue.
Marlene wants to know, are you laying colors directly over each other or side by side?
Directly over one another, but I'm using a very light touch. So here I'm adding a lavender, and I'm putting it on top of the blue. But if I use a light enough touch, then you'll still see the blue peeking through. So that's really is always my goal, is to, sometimes they're side by side. I don't always cover everything up exactly. Now I'm going to take this color, this pale kind of grayed down lavender, and I'm going to use it as if it were a knife and start carving into this tree shape, this dark tree shape, so that I can create a little bit more variety in the outline or the shape of it. So in other words, I made this big kind of solid shape. Instead of painting every leaf, what I'm going to do now is kind of come back into it and carve away. And sometimes I'll make the sky hole mark, and I'll just tap it down with my finger because it gets to be too solid. If I just put it there and leave it alone, it might look like it was an ornament or a decoration on the tree, and I really want it to look like you're looking through the tree. And very rarely do I get these sky holes right the first time. So it's really often a matter of playing back and forth with them and putting a few in, taking some out, adding more foliage, putting in a few more. So when you're doing the sky holes, don't stress if it feels like you're not getting them.
What brand of pastels are you using again?
They're mostly Terry Ludwig. This one is a Terry Ludwig. This sometimes they get worn and tiny, and it's harder for me to tell. So I'm adding this yellow because I want to have some of this warmth of that setting sun. So I'm going to just go on top of it with this yellow.
You always start with soft pastels, or do you ever use harder pastels?
Sometimes I'll use the hard ones, but I find a lot of times I just go right into the painting right with the softer pastels, because I know when I'm going to use a light touch, and I know when I'm using a heavy touch. And here's how the difference. Right now I'm pressing pretty hard as I apply these little sky holes. And the reason why I'm pressing pretty hard, because I know that those will be the last marks. I won't go back over them with any other color. So I can use a harder mark, or what I call a shouting mark. But when I want to build up layers, as I did in the darks, I use a very light touch. I'm going to add some more peachy color to this. But I don't have any rule where I say I can only go hard pastels to then soft. I'll usually jump right in with the hard ones, or soft ones rather. Okay, let's see. So now I've got the sky in place. I think I'm going to go a little bit lower with the sky here. Where the sky meets the marsh. I'm going to sneak the sun like behind some of this foliage right in here. And put some of that sunshine in here. Okay, now I'm going to address the grasses. So I'm going to start in the distant and make my way forward. So what I really need to do is, I'm just putting down this indication of there being some distant land in the way in the back there. And now what I want to do is put down a little bit of dirt. There's green in the grass, so I want to have some of the green. But before I put in the green, I want to put down some other colors. Now notice with this painting, I really haven't done an underpainting. So a lot of times for a painting, I think last week's painting, I actually put down 4 colors, and then I rubbed it in with the pipe foam insulation, and that was the underpainting. And for this painting, you notice I just kind of jumped right in and started painting, and I didn't really take time to put any other layer down. In other words, I didn't do any sort of wash underneath. I'm just actually going right for the pastel. And occasionally I'll do this. I love doing underpaintings, but sometimes as a challenge to myself, I'll just go ahead and start right in with the pastel. I really never have any one way of doing things, because if I did, I'd get bored. So I like to approach the painting process in a lot of different ways. So I'm adding some of this, what I call the dirt color, down here in the grasses. And I want to have a lot of this area in the shadow.
Yeah, I think Anthony just came in. He wanted to know where the reference photos was taken.
It was South Carolina, the coast of South Carolina. It's actually Pawleys Island. Now what I can do is I'm going to add some of the greens. Now that I've established the dirt color, that's the color that I feel would be underneath. Now I'm going to add some of this indication of the greens that are there in the meadow, in the marsh rather. But I'm going to have a lot of this orangey grass peeking through.
Are you working on UArt panel?
No, this is Pastel Premier white. It was white. So I like to work on the white every once in a while, just to change it up. Now I'm changing the direction that I'm putting in the grasses now, because the grasses that I'm painting at this point, right in this foreground area, are all up close so we can actually see the way the grasses are growing. And so that allows me to paint the direction or thrust of the grass, whereas in the distance I made them more of horizontal strokes. So that this way we're seeing just the tops of the grass. I like that there's just a little peak of light right in this grass area that's just sort of breaking through. So I added some of this rusty color. I'm adding now some of these cooler greens and blue greens in the shadowed areas of this grassy part. This is color here. There's a little bit of darkness in the grasses right in there. Okay. So now what I can do is I have a layer of pastel all over the entire thing. And now it's just a matter of refining it. And so everything is just ever so slightly out of focus. And now it's up to me to decide what I'm actually going to put into focus. Where am I going to make the most emphasis? And probably I'm going to add some purple down into these grasses. Adding the purple because as I took a minute to reflect, I realized I put purple up in the sky, but I didn't have any purple down on the ground. And I always like there to be some sort of visual connection between the two places. So I'm going to just throw some of that purple into those dark areas. And I'm going to put it in my tray since now I'm using it. So I think what I want to do is refine this area here because this is the most important area. And then I'll decide just how much focus or detail I'll put on the rest of it. So once I have everything in place, then it's just time to slow down and start refining things. And what I want to do is I want to add some of this sunlight to the edges. Where I think the trees would be catching some of this light over in here as well. Over here it's shadow and it's not getting any of the light. So I want to actually, I started with a darker red and now I'm adding kind of a rusty color. And I want to go to an orangey color. These are all colors that I've used in the grasses.
Hey, Barbara from England is here, your swimming partner.
Barbara, my swimming partner. Wasn't that a great swim? Yes. We had fun. Now I'm just adding some of this sunlight, and now I'm going and adding this orange. Now, like, I wouldn't normally think that it would be quite this orange, because really, what is it? It's these green trees, so how could they feel so orange? Back up just a little bit. Just like, you're too close.
Right here.
Right here?
Yeah.
That's part of it, I guess. Alright, so I added this specks of this bright orange, and these, now they're starting to become what I like to call my spice marks. So I'm starting to press a little bit harder and create a feeling of what some of these leaves would be like. And also I'm going to add some of this warmer green into the tree where it would still be warm from the sun, and then keep the cooler greens in the shadowed areas. And then once I have that in place, I can go ahead and add some of this orange to the edges of the trunk in here, and then into these grasses as well. And now I need to go back and remember I had said just a little bit ago that it's to create the sky holes in the trees. It's kind of a two-step process. So you start and you carve in, and then you add more foliage, and then you have to come back in with more sky until you get it to where it feels the right way. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the sky a little bit more. Change the shape a little bit more so it's not quite as solid as it is. And then you come back with more foliage. This is another reason why I like to already have my colors out here on the tray, because when I'm doing this refining process, it's really much easier to go back and forth when they're all here in front of you.
Holly's here.
Hi, Holly. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some of the grasses. I think what I want to do, and I did this last week, and I'm going to do it again because it's one of my favorite techniques for getting texture in the grass. And sometimes I'll even spray it so that it's not good. So see those dots? That to me is going to just add to the feeling of the texture, because it's very the grass is kind of growing in lots of different directions, and I want it to feel kind of wild and free. I'm going, while that's drying, I'm going to go in with my dark blue. Oops, I pressed a little too hard. And I'm going to kind of refine some of these trunks a little bit more. And I want to have some of this grass peek behind some of these trunks here.
What did you just spray?
I sprayed a little bit of workable fixative. So you can see with the workable fixative, and I did it in the painting last week, it darkens the it makes it dark, it changes the color. But I want it also fixes it in place. So now watch what happens when I'm going over it with this color, how you can still see the bits of dark peeking in. And I like the how that just sort of suggests the texture of the grass without me going in and actually painting blades of grass. So in the darker shadow areas, I'm using these cooler colors, and then where some of the light is popping through and maybe hitting some of these grasses right here on the edges of them.
What is the brand of the fixative?
It's Blair. It says very low odor, but it's not. It still smells. So I find that amusing.
Do you ever paint the sky first so you don't have to put the sky holes in later?
No, yeah, there's another, I mean, there's some artists who will paint the sky and then do it the opposite way, but I like to do it this way because I like to have, to me it's fun to do the carving. And if I did the sky first, I don't know. There's no right or wrong way, of course, on any of these. So you find a way that works for you.
Laura from Buffalo. Sorry about your grandpa, Laura.
Alright, now I'm just creating these grasses that are growing right in here, coming up, and there's still a wonderful tangle of branches and brambles and things growing up out of these grasses. So these are the finishing touches. These are the things you do right at the end. So I'm taking the dark blue. This is a harder pastel, and I'm actually just drawing with them so that I can kind of get this feeling of these this kind of wild tangle growing up into this marshy area and cover some of it with some more grass. And I think
It's very tangled.
I'll tell you, I remember standing here and saying to myself, you know, you really can't go any further because there's such it's just this mass of tangles. Now I'm going to come in and let's see. Just add a little bit more definition in here. Actually, I'm going to...
Sorry.
It's not you, it's Heidi. Heidi likes to stay here, and I have to remind myself that she's right at my feet. And you know how we're supposed to back up and look, and back up and look, and I forget that Heidi's right there, and she makes it dangerous sometimes. But I wouldn't change a thing.
Steve wants to know if you're still dabbling with water-soluble oils.
Yeah, well, I would love to dabble more, but I have been traveling so much this summer that I haven't really had a chance. This has really been the first week that I've been home long enough to do some daily painting. So it's been since April. It's been since April that I've been kind of traveling. I'm adding a little bit more purple to this distant bit of marsh. And then I'm going to come in with the sky color and give it a little, give it a little bit of a softer edge. Because I don't want it to be, because you can kind of see that there's glare from that setting sun, and so you can't really see how so I'm just kind of going over it with the sky color to soften it, to give that feeling that maybe there's just this glare. Add some of this orange to the tips of some of these things. Maybe a little spot in there.
Susan wants to know if you can have weekly classes in the studio this fall.
Who?
Susan Post.
Hi, Susan. I would love to. I have to look at the schedule. And see if I can get enough days together. So I'm in the process of looking at that, but I would love to, because there's I don't know, Rocky is back in town and he was asking about classes, so it'd be a lot of fun to have our group back together. So now what I'm going to do for the finishing touches for now, and you know, when I say finishing touches, it means finishing touches for this broadcast, because I will have to step back and evaluate it. But I want to do one extra thing. I have these pastels here that my friend Annika from Finland sent me, and they're Russian. Oh, well, I love these, and I need more of these. This is what she sent me, and I use them all the time. But they're harder pastels, and they're from Russia, and they make the most wonderful grasses. So I'm coming in now and with these, and they're the perfect colors for kind of dead grasses. And I'm just basically doing some scribbles so that I can kind of create that illusion of the grasses growing without painting every single blade of grass. So these are really great for that. And then where they kind of disappear into the shadows. What is this color? I need these in purple, that's what I need. So that's when I would then resort to some of these new pastels I have down in here. Here's a purple one. So in the shadows, I'm going to transition the grasses to some violets down in here. And again, by putting the violets down in the grasses, it helps connect to the violets that I put in the sky. And I need to do my final spice marks, and I'm going to come into my big selection here, and I want to add just a few little marks, little pieces of eye candy, and I'm using this sort of red violet color, and then put a few of those little marks in the grass. And then I really like this, so I'm going to shout a few of these marks in here, so I'm going to press a lot harder so that they're more visible right in here. And maybe those could look like little bits in the grass, just little sparkles of light. And basically at this point I would leave it alone and then again take my break, step back, and see where I need to put any finishing touches. But basically for this painting, the idea was to create a strong contrast between the dark shape and the light shape. So that was my plan, and I wanted to give this illusion of the sunlight going down and casting this glow on the trees. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If you want to write them in the comments, and I'll be glad to come back and look at them. But I hope you enjoyed today's installment of that goes with the territory.
Oh my God.
I know, I'm probably a mess. But anyway, so thanks everyone for watching, and Heidi thanks you, and Michael thanks you, and Jenny thanks you, and hopefully we'll be back next Sunday for another installment. So thanks everybody.